There comes a time when talk isn't enough, when God stops listening to excuses and starts looking for obedience. The Sabbath isn't a suggestion, it's a command. It's not optional, it's eternal. If you can't keep the Sabbath now in the time of mercy, how will you stand when the world turns against those who do? If you can't stand for truth and peace, how will you stand in persecution? The Sabbath is not about legalism, it's about loyalty. It's not about religion, it's about relationship. It's the one commandment that touches time itself, the very rhythm of heaven. And yet in this generation, it's the one commandment the world wants you to forget. But God said, remember. He knew the world would be too busy, too distracted, too self-centered to care. That's why he said, remember, because he knew we'd be tempted to forget. Keeping the Sabbath holy means more than not working. It means entering into divine rest. When your body stops moving, but your spirit starts worshiping. It's when you disconnect from the world and reconnect to the source. You can't keep the Sabbath holy while chasing the same things the world chases. You can't rest in God if you're still running after Pharaoh's approval. The Sabbath calls you out of Egypt, out of a system that uses you, drains you, and tells you your worth is in your work. If you can't keep the Sabbath now, when you have freedom, when no one's forcing you to bow to the beast system, how will you keep it when it costs your comfort, your career, your life? The Sabbath is the final test of allegiance, the line between convenience and conviction. Those who keep it now keep it because they love the Lord of the Sabbath, not out of fear but out of faith. When you honor the Sabbath, you're not losing a day, you're gaining eternity. You're aligning yourself with creation, with the same rhythm God established when he rested on the seventh day. It's not just a pause in your week, it's a proclamation to the world that your time, your heart, and your worship belong to the Creator. So stop making excuses. Stop saying I'll keep it later, or God understands my situation. No, God understands your heart. He sees whether your excuses are faith or if you can't keep the Sabbath now, when the Spirit still pleads, when grace still calls, you won't keep it when it becomes a crime to do so. The world is already preparing a counterfeit rest, a man-made replacement for God's holy day. And while millions bow to the convenience of Sunday, the remnant will stand firm in obedience to the Creator's command, not because it's popular, not because it's easy, but because it's right. So how do you keep the Sabbath holy? You protect it with your life. You treat it as sacred time, not your time. You plan your week around it, not squeeze it in when convenient. You honor it in thought, word, and action. You rest not just your hands but your mind. You spend that day in worship, reflection, in relationship, because it's not just a rule to follow, it's a gift to treasure. If you can't keep the Sabbath now, when the invitation is extended, forget it when the storm comes, because those who learn to rest now will be the only ones who can stand later. The Sabbath is not just about rest, it's about readiness. It prepares you for the coming kingdom, and only those who honor the Lord's day now will be ready to meet the Lord of that day. The test before the storm. Every test has a purpose, and every storm has a message. The Sabbath is not just a day of rest. It's a declaration of faith, a line drawn between those who serve God and those who follow convenience. Long before the final crisis comes upon the world, the test will already be here. The test of loyalty, of obedience, of worship. The question won't be whether you go to church or read your Bible, but whether you will stand for truth when truth costs everything. The Sabbath is that test before the storm. God doesn't test his people to destroy them. He tests them to reveal them. The Sabbath exposes what's in your heart. It shows whether your worship is genuine or just habitual. In a world where everything is driven by money, power, and speed, to stop for one day and give it back to God is an act of rebellion against Babylon's system. It's a divine protest that says, my time belongs to the Creator, not the corporation. My soul answers to heaven, not the system. Keeping the Sabbath in a world that profits from restlessness is a revolutionary act of faith. The storm that's coming will not begin with thunder or lightning. It will begin with laws, policies, and pressure. The same powers that have always opposed truth will rise again, wrapping deception in religious language. The world will offer a counterfeit rest, a man-made Sabbath, and those who don't comply will be labeled as disobedient, antisocial, or even dangerous. But before that day comes, God is watching who will stand in the small tests, who will keep his day holy now, when it's easy, so they can stand firm when it becomes hard. If you can't keep the Sabbath when no one's threatening you, how will you keep it when everyone's against you? The test before the storm begins now, in the quiet choices, in your daily routines, in whether you choose convenience or conviction. Every week when the Sabbath arrives, heaven watches to see who will remember and who will forget. The storm will only reveal what's already been decided in the heart. The Sabbath has always been a sign, a seal between God and his people. It says, I belong to the Creator. It's the mark of distinction in a world that has forgotten who made it. When you honor that day, you declare your citizenship in the kingdom that cannot be shaken. The storm will rage, the winds will blow, but those anchored in obedience will stand unmovable, because their rest is not in this world, it's in God. When Jesus was asleep in the boat during the storm, his disciples panicked, but he rested because his heart was anchored in his Father's will. That's the power of true Sabbath keeping. It gives you peace when others panic. It trains your spirit to be still when the world shakes. It's not just about one day. It's about learning to trust God every day. Those who rest in obedience now will not be restless in tribulation later. The storm is coming, a storm of deception, of spiritual compromise, of religious control. But before the storm, there's a test. And before the test, there's a call. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. This is the moment to decide. Not when the pressure comes, not when the law changes, but now, when grace still invites, when the Spirit still whispers, when truth still calls. The Sabbath is your preparation for what's ahead. It's your spiritual training ground. Every time you choose to rest in obedience, you're building endurance. Every time you resist the world's pull, you're strengthening your spirit. When the storm finally breaks, those who have learned to rest in God will not be moved. For the storm may shake the world, but it can't shake the soul that's anchored in the Lord of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a relationship, not a rule. The Sabbath was never meant to be a burden. It was always meant to be a blessing. Too many people treat it like a checklist, a rule to follow, a law to obey, a box to tick so they can feel righteous. But the Sabbath is not about rules, it's about relationship. It's the Creator saying to his creation, spend time with me. It's God carving out sacred space in time so you can remember who you are, in whose you are. From the beginning, before there was sin, before there was pain, before there was religion, there was rest. God created man on the sixth day, and the very next day, he rested. That means Adam's first full day on earth wasn't one of work, but one of worship. His first sunrise wasn't about productivity, it was about presence. The Sabbath was never a reaction to sin. It was part of the design. It was how God bonded with his creation, how he established relationship before instruction. When Jesus walked the earth, he saw how people had twisted the Sabbath into something cold and rigid. They had turned it into a list of restrictions instead of a doorway to intimacy. But Christ said the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other words, the Sabbath was designed for your healing, your peace, your restoration. It's a divine appointment with the one who made you. Every Friday sunset, heaven invites you to stop, breathe, and remember that you were created by love. For love. Keeping the Sabbath holy means protecting that relationship. You can't claim to honor God while ignoring the time he set apart to commune with you. It's like being in a relationship and always saying you're too busy to spend time together. You may still talk about love, but you've lost the connection. God is not looking for mechanical obedience. He's seeking relational devotion. When you keep the Sabbath from the heart, it's not about what you can't do. It's about what you get to do. Rest, reflect, and reconnect with your Maker. Think of it this way. Every week, the Sabbath is a love letter written in time. It's God's way of saying, you don't have to earn my favor. You don't have to chase the world. Just come sit with me. It's the antidote to burnout, the cure for spiritual amnesia. When you rest in Him, you remember that your value doesn't come from what you produce. It comes from who He is. When we treat the Sabbath as a rule, it becomes heavy. When we treat it as a relationship, it becomes holy. The Pharisees missed that. They guarded the letter of the law but lost the heart behind it. They couldn't see that the Lord of the Sabbath was standing right in front of them, offering freedom. That's what happens when religion replaces relationship. The gift becomes a burden, but those who love the giver understand that the Sabbath is an invitation, not an imposition. Every week when you step into the Sabbath, heaven leans close. God doesn't just want your time. He wants your attention. He wants to speak peace into your chaos, strength into your weakness, purpose into your confusion. The Sabbath isn't about what you stop doing. It's about who you start being, a son or daughter resting in the arms of their Father. When you see the Sabbath as relationship, everything changes. It's no longer a day you have to keep. It's a day you can't wait to meet. It becomes a rhythm of love that sustains you through the storms of life. You start to understand why God said, remember, because in remembering Him, you find yourself, and when you rest in Him, you're reminded that holiness was never about rules. It was always about relationship. Preparation is the key to obedience. Obedience doesn't happen by accident. It's a choice that begins with preparation. The Sabbath is holy, but it doesn't become holy in your life unless you prepare for it. God commanded His people to remember the Sabbath day, not when it arrived, but before it came. He gave them 6 days to get ready. 6 days to align their hearts, their homes, and their hands so that when the seventh day arrived, they could enter into rest without distraction. Preparation is the foundation of obedience, because you can't honor what you haven't planned for. In the wilderness, when God rained down manna, He told Israel to gather twice as much on the 6th day, because on the Sabbath there would be none. It wasn't just about food. It was a test of faith. Would they trust His word enough to prepare in advance? Or would they wait until the last minute and find themselves empty? Those who ignored the instruction when hungry. Those who prepared in faith were fed in peace. That story still speaks to us today. The reason many believers struggle to keep the Sabbath is not because they don't love God, but because they don't prepare for Him. You can't keep the Sabbath holy if your life is filled with chaos all week. You can't truly rest if you've done nothing to make room for rest. Preparation isn't just about cleaning your house or finishing your work early. It's about preparing your spirit. It's about clearing your heart from the clutter of the week. It's about saying, Lord, I want to meet you with a clear mind, a clean heart, and a calm spirit. When you do that, you create sacred space for the presence of God to dwell. Obedience becomes effortless when preparation is intentional. Those who live without preparation always live in reaction, but those who prepare walk in revelation. They move with purpose. They treat the Sabbath like a royal appointment, not a random interruption. You can tell how much someone values the Sabbath by how they treat the day before it. The 6th day, preparation day, reveals the posture of your heart. It's not just another Friday. It's the doorway to divine rest. Preparation also builds discipline, and discipline deepens faith. Every week, when you plan for the Sabbath, you're training your spirit to prioritize God over everything else. You're telling your schedule, your job, your errands, and your distractions that they all have limits, but God doesn't. You're declaring that no matter how much there is to do, nothing is more important than time with your Creator. That mindset transforms obedience from duty into delight. Think about it. You prepare for everything else that matters. You prepare for a wedding, for a meeting, for a vacation. Why not prepare for the day that God Himself blessed and sanctified? The Sabbath is not just another day. It's heaven's appointment with humanity. And just like any important relationship, preparation is a form of honor. It tells God, I value this time with you enough to plan for it. When you live with preparation, obedience becomes natural. You won't be rushing at sunset, trying to fix what should have been done hours ago. You'll step into the Sabbath with peace, knowing you've done your part and that God will do the rest. You'll be able to sit in stillness, free from guilt or distraction, and truly experience what it means to rest in Him. Preparation isn't just about order, it's about love. You prepare for what you care about, and when you prepare for the Sabbath, you're showing God that His presence is worth rearranging your life for. Because when obedience begins with preparation, rest becomes revelation. You stop striving, you stop surviving, and you start abiding in the one who said, "Be still and know that I am God." The counterfeit rest of the beast system. The world is offering a counterfeit rest, a rest that looks peaceful on the surface, but is poisoned at the core. The beast system, driven by power and deception, has crafted a false Sabbath, a man-made alternative to the command of God. It promises unity, convenience, and progress. But beneath it lies rebellion against the Creator. This counterfeit rest is not about worshiping God, it's about replacing Him. It's the great deception of the last days, where comfort becomes the weapon that kills conviction. When God sanctified the seventh day, He marked it as His signature on creation. The Sabbath is heaven's seal, the reminder that time itself belongs to the Creator. But the enemy has always sought to counterfeit what God made holy. If God has a seal, Satan has a mark. If God has a holy day, the beast system offers its counterfeit day. This false rest, often disguised as spiritual progress or unity among nations, is nothing more than rebellion repackaged. It seeks to erase God's authority over time and to enthrone man in his place. The beast system doesn't always come through brute force. It comes through subtle persuasion. It says, "You don't need to be so strict about the Sabbath. Any day will do." It whispers, "God understands. You're too busy. You've got to survive." It paints disobedience as freedom and calls compromise wisdom. But heaven's command has never changed. The same voice that said, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy," still speaks today with the same authority. And in the last days, that voice will divide the world into two groups: those who keep God's commandments and those who follow the counterfeit. The false rest of the beast system is not rest at all. It's deception. It offers you a break from work, but not from sin. It soothes your conscience, but robs your soul. It tells you to honor a day that God never blessed, and to forget the day He made holy. And millions will accept it, not because they hate God, but because they love convenience. That's the power of the counterfeit. It looks close enough to truth to be convincing, but close to truth is still a lie. This is why the Sabbath matters more than ever. It's not about legalism or tradition. It's about allegiance. The real rest comes from trusting God's word over man's decree. When you keep the true Sabbath, you're saying to the world, "My loyalty is not for sale. My obedience cannot be legislated." The Sabbath becomes your protest against the system that tries to control time, worship, and conscience. It's your declaration of independence from Babylon, a spiritual act of resistance. The beast system thrives on distraction. It wants to keep humanity too busy to notice that it's being enslaved. But the Sabbath stops the machine. It reminds you that you are not property of the system. You are a child of God. The false Sabbath tells you to rest when man says rest. The true Sabbath tells you to rest when God says rest. And that difference will soon separate the faithful from the deceived. When the final crisis comes, the world will unite under the banner of counterfeit rest. It will look like peace, but it will lead to persecution. Those who refuse to bow to the false Sabbath will be mocked, restricted, and rejected. But they will stand, not because they are stubborn, but because they know the truth. They've learned the rhythm of heaven and will not trade it for the melody of Babylon. True rest cannot be legislated. It can't be replaced by man-made decrees. It's found only in obedience to the Creator. The Sabbath remains the divine mark of trust, a seal upon those who refuse the counterfeit rest of the beast system. In the end, the choice will be clear: rest with the world, or rest with God. One offers comfort for a season, the other offers eternity. Holiness requires separation. Holiness has always required separation. You cannot walk in the ways of the world and expect to carry the presence of God. From Genesis to Revelation, every act of sanctification began with a call to come out, to be different, to be distinct, to be set apart. The Sabbath is no exception. God didn't just bless the seventh day, He sanctified it. That means He separated it from the rest. He drew a line in time and said, "This is mine," and those who walk in covenant with Him must honor that separation if they are to walk in holiness. You cannot keep the Sabbath holy if your life looks exactly like everyone else's. The world runs on endless motion, chasing money, status, and success. But the children of God live by a different rhythm. The Sabbath is the weekly reminder that you don't belong to Pharaoh's system anymore. You've been delivered from the bondage of performance and called into the rest of obedience. When you set the Sabbath apart, you're not just keeping a commandment, you're declaring that your allegiance is to the Creator, not the culture. Separation is not isolation. God doesn't call you away from the world because He hates it. He calls you out so you can be a light to it. But light can't mix with darkness without losing its brilliance. Holiness is about being in the world, but not of it, living with purpose, purity, and conviction. The Sabbath trains you for that lifestyle. Every week, when you stop what the world continues to do, you are reminded that you serve a higher kingdom. You learn to say no to the demands of man, so you can say yes to the will of God. That's why the Sabbath feels uncomfortable to the flesh. It demands discipline. It forces you to confront your attachments. It exposes where your trust truly lies. For many, the idea of resting feels impossible, because they've tied their identity to what they produce. But holiness begins when you're willing to let go. To keep the Sabbath holy means to separate your time, your thoughts, and your attention from the noise of the world. It's about creating sacred space where heaven can speak and your spirit can breathe again. When God called Israel out of Egypt, He didn't just want to free their bodies, He wanted to free their minds. The Sabbath was His way of rewiring their hearts from slavery to sonship. In Egypt, there were no rest days, only endless labor. But in God's kingdom, rest is worship. It's how you show that He, not your work, sustains you. That's why the Sabbath is not negotiable. It's evidence of who owns your time. When you honor that day, you separate yourself from the system that seeks to enslave you again. Holiness will always cost you something. It might cost you friends, opportunities, or approval, but it will never cost you more than disobedience will. Separation feels lonely at first, but it's in that space that God reveals Himself most clearly. The Sabbath is your weekly reminder that separation leads to revelation. When you choose to step away from the noise, you begin to hear His voice again. You start to see what others can't see and feel what others can't feel. The peace that passes understanding. To be holy means to live differently, to love differently, to rest differently. It means allowing God to define your priorities instead of culture. So guard the Sabbath. Treat it as sacred time. Let the world know by your example that holiness still matters. Because in a world drowning in compromise, the greatest witness you can give is your willingness to be set apart. Holiness requires separation, not to make you superior, but to make you available. Available for purpose, available for peace, available for the presence of the God who said, "Be holy, for I am holy."